Live from Utah's Wasatch Front, the pulse of the Mountain West, where the issues that shape your life meet the truth that sets you free. Across Utah, across the Republic, and around the world, welcome. This is KMMU.
Hey everybody, it's Goud. Sorry, and welcome to the Goud Crowd. We don't have Mr. Producer here today, so it'll just be me kind of working my way through the technology. As you can probably see, it says talk to Sarah and Steve, and I am neither of them, so I am going to try to fix this. Give me 1 second. I just can't figure out... The piece I'm a little confused about is that I don't have the call-in number. Okay, give me a second. Let me take a photo. And then let me go here. I'm sure everyone's getting bored. Hold on. Let me see if I can do this. Did that fix it? I don't know where this is coming from. Oh, wait, hold on. Here we go. Oh, I fixed it. Okay, cool. Anyway, let's get started. I'm Goud. I'm the host of the Goud Crowd. I haven't been here for a couple weeks, so I apologize, and thank you for coming back. We should have a good show today, so let's start out by, I have things to talk about. So let me start with, and we'll go through a few things today. We'll talk about the primary results. I think I'll do that a little bit later in the show. We'll talk about Maddie's secret. I have a little test to see if you guys can figure out what Maddie's secret is. Then we'll talk about Amy Winder-Newton getting fired from her job with Governor Cox. I don't know. I'll just be honest with you, though. I don't have all confirmation on all the information yet. But I will just say that I heard she got fired, and I think there's a lot more coming out on that one. Then we'll talk about the vexatious requester petition from Lieutenant Governor Henderson for her attempt to classify 4 people as vexatious requesters. We'll talk about more scandal in the Utah Republican Party. Apparently, all we do now is go after whistleblowers and try to remove them from the party. I don't see how this is a winning strategy, but we'll see where that leads. And then I have some kind of random things that we'll go through. So, including socialism. The Democrats are going down this socialism or communism phase or whatever. And the Republicans seem very excited that that's the direction they're going in. And I think it's misguided because the Republicans also push socialism. Their argument essentially is, well, you should, instead of going for the Democrat version of socialism, you should have our version of socialism, which is just corrupt and benefits all of their big donors instead of regular everyday people. So, I just don't think that's a winning argument. The status quo sucks, and I think most people feel that way. And so if the GOP wants to go and run on their status quo economy that helps their donors and helps rich people at the expense of everybody else, and yes, it does. I may sound a little bit like a leftist today, but I do feel like the systems we have set up right now are intended to benefit their donors over everyday people. So they are getting stuff at our expense. And I think until that's fixed, you're going to have this kind of populism come up from the left, and it's going to be effective because the Republicans' counter to it is not free markets. It's actually just do our socialism instead. That's not going to work. Okay. Let's start with this. This study came out today from the Federal Reserve. And I just wanted to pull it up for a minute because I think you can see, here's the headline from the New York Post. And they say that according to this study from the Federal Reserve, Biden's illegal immigration surge triggered 30% rise in home prices, 20% increase in rents. Okay, that's what the Federal Reserve says. I don't know if it's true or not, right? I think it obviously caused a big demand on housing, and they were getting all sorts of special things from the federal government that the rest of us were not getting. It also caused a huge increase in the number of people who needed apartments, which probably drove up the rents of apartments. But here's what people aren't focused on. And this makes me think that the whole thing is biased, and probably it may be actually understating the problems from this. They say here, the authors caution the study is a preliminary draft circulated for professional comment and does not necessarily, oh, this is another one. Sorry. Oh, yeah, okay. Wrong quote. Let me try again. Okay, researchers found the influx of illegal immigrants boosted employment with little measurable effect on wages, but significantly increased housing demand. Does anybody actually believe that? Or is anyone that stupid to think that having a flood of 20, I would say probably closer to 30 million illegal immigrants under Biden had no impact on wages? Like, are you serious? And I think what this is actually saying is that wages didn't go down, because that rarely happens. What it has actually caused, and this is immigration in total, legal and illegal, and this includes like your temporary worker programs from like your from H-1Bs and H-2As and H-2Bs and like all H-4As, which are like the spouses of H-1B visas. Those suppress wage increases, and they have prevented wages from increasing, making it so that we're all actually significantly poorer today than we were just 6 years ago. If you think about kind of Trump's first term, the real hallmark of it was, there was all this drama. I just think that comes with Trump, because it does get the opposition to be fully engaged in stopping everything he's doing. I think he tends to pick bad people around him, unfortunately. He still is having the same issue with not picking great people. But the economy was solid in the Trump first term until COVID hit, and he fell for all the BS about shutting the economy down, and gave the permission, because that's what he did, for state and local governments to shut down every aspect of our economy. And what that did, if you think about post that time, is we ended up with the federal government massively increasing in size and scope, spending tons more money, printing tons of money, and causing a massive inflation spike. Now, I will tell you that before that, I had talked about, I always thought inflation was higher than what they reported. If you actually go and look at how they calculate inflation, they leave out the things that go up the most, or they find ways to make it seem like the increases are smaller than they are. So for example, taxes. I don't even think like property taxes are part of the inflation calculation. So if my $6,000 property tax bill goes up 10%, that's $600 more every year, and that's huge. But if you're not counting it in the inflation calculation, then it doesn't really matter. And I don't think they calculate it, because instead they calculate what would it cost for me to buy a house. Well, you're not counting a big part of that expense. And so as property taxes are going up, that's a huge inflation spike. But the point being, I think inflation has caused prices to double since 2020, and I do not think wages have kept up. And in fact, when I've looked for jobs, like lawyer jobs, and just kind of looked at what they're paying and stuff, they're still paying what they paid in 2020. And sometimes I feel like they're paying less, which isn't enough, because again, prices have gone up so much that everything is unaffordable. And what they try to do is say, oh, okay, well, the price of eggs is down. Okay, well, I buy eggs like, let's say once every 2 weeks, but the price of everything else is up. It's much higher. It's totally expensive to live. And I think everybody is feeling that, because most things will not go back down in price. And you can try to claim that that's not how you fix the problem. I don't think the inflation problem of the past 6 years will actually be fixed by trying to get prices to drop. They actually have to be fixed by letting wages rise. And the only way for that to happen is that you have to have a labor shortage. And we will never have it in this country if we constantly are allowing new people to come here. We actually have to shut the labor market off, meaning the growth of it from immigration. So no more illegals. Deport all the illegals here, which is what we voted for and we're not getting, and then stop all the temporary visa programs, and stop immigration completely. I'm tired of it. Like I live in Riverton, and I go to the grocery store, and usually I'm the only person who speaks English there, and it's weird to me because I'm like, I live in America. If I go to the grocery store, everybody should be speaking English. It should be an exception to the rule that someone doesn't, not the rule. So, I think if we actually want to see wages go up and to make up for all the inflation that's happened, we have to be immigration restrictionists. And I'll just be honest, I don't know if Utahns are there. That's kind of, I think the LDS Church, like the Catholic Church, is very pro open borders, and it's to the detriment of their congregants. But it's if their congregants support that, the congregants support that. But my point here, the point I'm bringing this up is the fact this is actually, I thought, even more interesting than the point about rent and mortgages, or the housing prices and rent going up, is that allegedly it has no impact on wages. When anyone who works knows this totally has an impact on wages. Okay, now let me take this off. Okay, now I'm going to show you this little clip. I went to a movie last night and I saw this movie called Stop That Train and it's RuPaul's Drag Race movie by RuPaul. But so let me show you this. It's a movie called Maddie's Secret. I just want to see if you guys can guess the secret. So, okay, give me 1 second because it's kind of funny. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce the newest gourmet chef, Maddie Ralph! Right, come on!
I'm quite passionate about food.
Natural Maddie!
You have a gift, Maddie, and you should share it with the world.
It's like you're out of some modern-day fairy tale. You're perfect.
Don't you ever get tired of being such a good girl?
No.
So, okay. I feel like I showed you enough to be able to guess what Maddie's secret is. But ironically, I was actually reading about the movie, and the secret is not that she's a man. The secret is that she has bulimia. So it could be an interesting movie. I might go see it. I can't stand people that are transgender with their politics, but it could be an interesting movie nonetheless. Okay, so this week, the Utah Supreme Court came out with a really interesting decision. There's a town called, in Summit County, called West Hills. Or it's not a town yet, but there's a group of people in Summit County who want to incorporate a town called West Hills. And so there's an attorney, he's the sponsor, and he had filed this paperwork in April of 2023. He actually went through all of the appropriate procedures of the law to get it approved and to put it on the ballot. It should have been on the ballot last year in 2024, but then some of the landowners in the area actually challenged the incorporation, and they said that it violated due process. Uniform operation of laws. That's kind of a Utah concept. And basically, if you're a landowner with like a minimum amount of land, I'm just going to make up a number, but let's say an acre, and you are included in the town and you meet certain requirements, you had the right to ask to be removed from the town boundaries. And so this happens. So there's basically the sponsor files a petition to incorporate. If the lieutenant governor finds that it meets the minimal population requirements, minimum other legal requirements, then they'll say, okay, it's approved. We're going to have a meeting. At the meeting, if you're one of the landowners whose land is included in the town, you can then ask to be excluded from the map. So when this happened with West Hills, there were some people who asked to be excluded, and then the town ended up not having enough people to be able to incorporate. And so after that process, the sponsor, according to statute, has an opportunity to add more landowners to it. And then they have a second meeting. But But what changes is that those landowners who had met those legal requirements to be able to ask for exclusion in the first round, people who are added in the second round, which can't be the people that were excluded from after the first round, they don't have the opportunity to ask for to be excluded. According to the statute, they just cut that right off. And so these landowners had argued that this is a violation of the uniform operation of laws because it's treating people that are similarly situated differently, and there wasn't like a basis for it. But anyway, this is the Utah Supreme. Sorry, let me step back. So the landowners challenged it. The Utah District Court ruled that the incorporation statute was unconstitutional and that it violated this uniform operations of laws. And this week, or maybe it was last week, the Utah Supreme Court actually ruled, I guess it was last week since it's Monday. The Utah Supreme Court actually overturned the district judge's decision and found that that the legislature actually did have a right to be able to set the law up the way they did, that incorporation is judged based on a rational basis. So it's like the lower standard. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain this. Because the classification of individuals was not based on a suspect class like race, the courts look at the legislature's justification with rational basis, which is the lowest standard possible under the uniform operational laws. And so this passed that because the question here was not who you are. So like, is it a brown person, a white person, whatever, like trying to remove the land. It was just a timing issue. When was your land included in the proposed incorporation would determine whether you had a right to ask for exclusion. So here, they won at the Supreme Court. And so now this incorporation will actually be on the ballot in the fall of 2026. So this year. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. I actually helped draft the motions for the sponsor, the motions for summary judgment in the district court. And I just thought it was a really fascinating legal issue because there was some really good testimony by Steve Waldrop. So now the housing czar, he was in the legislature at the time, and he actually explained it really well and did a great job, and the law seemed very clear. I think here the district judge probably a little bit too close to it, a little bit activist. The Supreme Court came out with, I thought, a fantastic decision, and the decision is actually by a newer judge. So it gives me hope that some of these new justices will be very good. And this one was, let me see what his name is. It is, Justice Nielsen. So I went and I watched the oral arguments when it happened because, like I said, I'm very familiar with the facts, even though maybe it didn't sound like that. I'm very familiar with the facts. Drafted the motions for summary judgment at the district court level. And Judge Nielsen was excellent, I thought, during oral argument and asked phenomenal questions. And you could tell kind of how he's thinking about issues. He was just appointed to the Supreme Court in October of 25, so I think he's coming through the new process. So hopefully we'll get more judges like this instead of kind of the liberal justices we've got in the past. Something a little hopeful for people. Okay, I give a little hint of this. So Amy Winder Newton, I posted about this, but she got fired from her job as the director of families for the state. And so here, let me pull up my post about it. And I think maybe tomorrow is her last day. I mean, look, good riddance. You know, there's all these people that always tell me how she's a great mother and a great wife and blah, blah, whatever. But she's, as far as I'm concerned, she's a horrible person. She actually got the Utah Log Cabin Republicans shut down because we were conservative and that bothered her. So, but anyway, and what I heard through the grapevine is that she was asked to leave because she has too much baggage. And then, you know, this is kind of the nice way of letting somebody leave without telling the public you're firing them. Trump likes to always kind of embarrass people as they're out the door for whatever reason. Yeah, but in this case, they're not embarrassing Amy as she leaves. Tomorrow's her last day. And I thought her statement was kind of interesting too. So she said here that she gave notice. Here's the thing, and let me put it this way. Governor Cox, I think, is going to run for president, right, in 2028. So if you're one of his top staffers, you're not going to choose now to leave his staff, especially if you think there's potential that he might run for president, and then you would get all these connections because he's not going to become president. I mean, no offense to Cox fans, but yeah, he kind of comes off kind of faggy and whiny. And so that, I don't think that's going to play. He doesn't come off very masculine. That's not going to play anywhere else. I think in a lot of other areas, people don't like that. I think in Utah, a lot of LDS men tend to be like that. So maybe it's a little bit more normal. But like, I didn't grow up here, and I can tell you men don't act like him. If you go to places like Illinois, California, Texas, so that's not going to play. It plays here. It's not going to play anywhere else. So you wouldn't leave this position though if you're Amy Winder Newton, because you'd be hoping that even if he runs and loses, he'll end up in some position, and you can follow him to DC and, you know, make your dreams of being a federal government appointee. And so she says here, I met with the governor and chief of staff and gave notice that I would be leaving my position as senior advisor to the governor and director of the Office of Families on July 7th. Today I'm wondering, what have I done? I believe God gave us direction in our life when we ask. I believe God can give us direction in our life when we ask. In April, I started feeling promptings from the Spirit, and it was time to leave my state job. I had just finished a successful legislative session and have spent nearly 4 years in this position as the inaugural director of a new office. This also doesn't make sense because she will no longer be in the county council anymore. So she's got, like, why would you leave this job? It actually pays well too. Then she said, I fought those feelings for a bit, but finally came to the conclusion that while I had no idea what was next for me, God did, and I better listen. Jumping into or out of something new is not easy. And when people say, what's next for you? My answer is that I'm not sure. But I know that God knows, and that this next phase will be the best for me as I learn and grow. I will be forever grateful that Governor Cox, Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson, and Chief John Pierpont took a chance on me in 22. They had an idea for an Office of Families and trusted me to bring it to life. I'm so proud of the important work I got to be a part of. Social media legislation to protect children, that's really to protect control speech. Getting cell phones out of schools, yeah, I'm okay with that one, except I will say that, like, one of the problems with it is now kids can't record teachers doing bad stuff. The trade-off probably should have been no cell phones in schools, but we are going to record classes so you can see what the teachers are doing. Right? That would have been a better trade-off, I think. A child tax credit for young families, improved family-friendly workplaces in the government. It's all in the government. So government workers have great benefits that you and I don't have. Ta-da! Home visiting program. Oh, they're going to visit your home to mentor vulnerable families with young children. Can you imagine this one? My impression has been that a lot of, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of LDS people kind of look down on people that are not LDS. So I could see something like this being weaponized to go after people that are not LDS. Like, oh, you must not be good parents because you're not LDS. I don't like stuff like this. Also, I don't want the government in my house. I don't have kids, but even if I had kids, I wouldn't want the government coming to my house unless there's a reason to be there. I don't want your mentorship. If I need mentorship, I will go and talk to people that are successful parents about how to be a good parent. Like I would talk to my own parents, you know. This truly has been one of my most cherished career experiences. I can't talk today, and I am going to miss this work and the many wonderful people I've been fortunate to work with. And then she's got this picture of Oh, there's Steve Waldrop. This is actually, I guess, the governor's staff or something. Yeah. Oh, I don't know why it's black and white. Anyway, fake. She got fired. Now, I've heard some rumors about some of the issues surrounding her, and so we will find out. I think we'll find out what those issues are, because I don't want to jump the gun and say what they are. I'll just say that they are not good. I don't wish anything bad on people. I'm not Amy Winder Newton. She's a witch, but and she is a nasty witch. Like, you know, I think I've told you guys this before. Like, she actually attacked the log cabin Republicans and led, she said, dozens of elected Republicans to go and contact the national group to shut our chapter down, because we were the fastest growing log cabin group in the country, or one of the fastest growing, and we were actually conservative. They didn't like that. All they want are people that will constantly, you know, suck up to the establishment people and do what they want. Yeah, that's not my style. So she got that shut down. I think she was involved in getting me fired from my job. That was another one of her little specials. And she's just, you know, she falsely accused Dave Robinson of sexually harassing her. And it's just a disgusting human being. And people have told, and every time you mention this to some people, they'll be like, well, I've heard she's a good mother and a good wife. And I'm like, first of all, I have no way to confirm that. Although if what I'm hearing is true, she's not. But I have no way to confirm that. And even if she is, I don't care. What the fuck does that have to do with me? Sorry, it's part of my French. What does that have to do with me? Like, if you're a good mother, but you're nasty to other people's children and you abuse your office, what does it matter to me that you're a good mother? And if you're good mothering is that you're getting your kids jobs that they're not otherwise qualified for, I don't think that makes you a good mother. I actually think it makes you a shitty human being. Yeah, it's getting me worked up. She's a witch. Good riddance. Once I get confirmation on the other stuff, I will release it. Because karma is a B. Disagree Butter says, I always get a kick out of gay dudes calling other guys the F word. Well, because it doesn't mean being gay. You know, like, I've had some people say, oh, you can't say that because you're saying it to gay people. I'm like, I don't mean that he's gay. I mean, being a fag has nothing to do in my mind with being gay at all. If you said it to me, I'd be like, okay, whatever. But I actually think it's a perfect description of certain types of people that are douchebags. And that Governor Cox is exactly that. He comes off that way. Monica Wilbur says, oof, OOF, Office of Families, literally the acronym of the office run by Amy Winder Newton. That's good. That's good. Okay, so I think there'll be more to come on this. I know some people that are looking into it as we kind of get, like, you know, I don't want to jump the gun again. I just think it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Okay, so some of you have heard about this because Michael Clara posted about it, but Lieutenant Governor Henderson filed a petition to declare 4 people vexatious requesters under grandma. And so if it was granted, what this would do is to shut off the ability of the 4 people to be able to file grandma requests for a certain period of time. That's like the punishment of it. And I will just tell you, I know Michael Clara hasn't disclosed who the 4 people are besides him. I'm one of the people. And so just as a little bit of background, right, there's 2 paths to get onto the Republican primary ballot. You can go to our GOP convention and get at least 40% of the vote from the delegates. Or if you're running in a statewide office, you have to get 28,000 signatures from registered Republicans throughout the state. So in 2024, when Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor Henderson ran for re-election, they got less than 40% of the vote at the GOP state convention from the delegates. So that meant that their only path to get onto the GOP primary ballot was to get at least 28,000 signatures from registered Republicans. They did not do that. They failed to do that. And then they cheated. That's another way of saying they cheated. They knew they cheated, and then they covered it up. And so the only way we've been able to expose this is through the grandma process. So if you didn't have like a Michael Clara, a Natalie Clausen, a Phil Lyman kind of going through this, making these grandma requests and going through the process, we would not actually have confirmation that they cheated in that election. That is why Lieutenant Governor Henderson is trying to have us all designated, or actually, I'm just saying the two people designated as vexatious requesters. So when they sent this over to they've sent this over twice now. So the first time they sent it over to the Government Records Office, they have this legal person. She's like a legal assistant, paralegal at the Lieutenant Governor's office. Her name's Maddie Topic. She sent in the request for the vexatious requester petition to the Government Records Office the first time, and it got denied because she failed to include a declaration, whatever, swearing that her allegations against us were true. Then they refiled it with the petition, with the declaration. And when she did that, she tried to basically, they're combining all four people, because if they just had one person, I don't think they get to vexatious requester based on volume. But so she refiled it with the declaration. When she did that, I emailed and I said, look, we are requesting that both the director of the Government Records Office and the secretary recuse yourselves from this lawsuit, from this request, because you are both biased against Michael Clara and the other individuals that are part of this request, as we have shown if you read through the fact section of the Rule 60B motion, because we've laid it out in detail. Now, they didn't actually, and think about it this way, that motion was successful and it showed that there has been a cover up here, right? But like they never responded to that request. Instead, the director of the Government Records Office denied the petition again and told them you cannot actually file a petition against more than one person. You have to file it against each person individually. And so for now, this is gone. Now, what I'll say is this. I think that Lieutenant Governor Henderson, her office and her staff are abusing grandma and the vexatious requester designation. This is aimed at people who are actually abusing grandma and causing a massive workload on the government with petitions that are not merited. Here, all of this is about corruption within the Lieutenant Governor's office and exposing their own cheating. So, if they didn't cheat in 2024, you wouldn't have people making grandma requests about the cheating. So this is, again, kind of that targeting victims instead of, and using the law to target victims in this case, which seems to be a thing in Utah generally. I don't know what it is about this, but like we have a real problem where we victim shame and we go after victims. And in this case, the people who stole the election are now trying to weaponize this law to shut down attempts to be able to bring transparency to their cheating. If they want to stop the grandma request, release all the information. There will be no more grandma requests and we're done. But they're not going to do it because the Lieutenant Governor Henderson is fantasizing that she's going to be the governor in 2028. That's what this is. Like, she goes to bed every night. Probably, she probably doesn't think about her husband because I don't think that she likes him, but fantasizing about how she's going to be governor in 2028, how Amy Winder Newton is going to be her lieutenant governor, and they'll scissor until the sun comes up or whatever. And when you think about it, that's what this is about. She has to keep stuff covered up because she was involved in cheating and she knows it. And the only way to kind of keep up the facade, because there's some portion of Utah's population that will never believe that it was stolen because they think, again, you know how this goes, Lieutenant Governor Henderson is a good mother and a good wife, allegedly. Now, I don't think she is. I think she's a pathological liar. And we've gone through on the show the multiple times that she has lied about all sorts of different topics. The woman is not to be trusted. And look, if she runs for governor, that we will go through and we will dig through everything to find all the bad stuff she does. Because I guarantee you, the issues that Amy Winder Newton are having, allegedly, probably are similar to the issues that Lieutenant Governor Henderson has. Because what you have to realize is that these elected officials in Utah get a free pass a lot of times. And a lot of it has to do with the faith thing, right? Because they'll say to you, and I understand this. I think, a lot of LDS people, they're very good people. My neighbors are LDS. They're all very good people. They don't seem to be, as far as I can tell, they're not involved in anything weird. I hear about swingers in Daybreak, but I don't think the swingers are where I live because I don't live in Daybreak. If you want to swing, you do your thing. But what I was going to say is that they're good people, and so they project that onto other people of their faith. But the problem is when the other people are not actually good people, and they're using your goodness to cover up their badness, and that's what happens a lot here, I think. And so Lieutenant Governor Henderson is a bad person. She's a pathological liar. She cheated and stole an election, and she's done other very bad things, including when she accused the 2024 delegates at the GOP convention of attacking her nieces. That was totally made up and fake. But people refused to actually hold her accountable for that. And what she did was horrible because she's maligning people as being bad people because she was unhappy with the election results that happened. That's all that was about. And so when you kind of begin to put this into, I think, when you understand how they think, they're not thinking like you're thinking. Like Lieutenant Governor Henderson isn't thinking, well, all my fellow congregants think I'm a good person, so I should try to be a good person. She's not thinking that. She's thinking, I don't need to be a good person because people project onto me that I'm a good person when I'm not. And I just wish we'd look into that deeper, because that is, I think, what's driving this. If people had more of a questioning and less trusting of elected officials, we'd be much better off in this state. Much better off. Okay. So anyway, we'll see what happens with this. It is possible that they'll try to refile it again because they've already done it twice. Maybe they think a third time's a charm. We will fight it because I don't think any of the requests here are vexatious, or any of the people that are requesting it are vexatious. These are totally frivolous petitions being filed by people that are trying to cover up cheating. And the thing is, Lieutenant Governor Henderson didn't do it by herself. She also had help from her staff. There's that guy, Ryan Cowley, the director of elections, fully involved in this. Michael Clare released an audio where Ryan Cowley is actually trying to dissuade the investigators from the Attorney General's office from looking at Governor Cox's signature petitions because he knew. And this is before the primary election ballots went out. So he knew exactly what was going on. And I think there's more people in that office who are also involved. So you don't get a free pass because someone higher than you made the decision and you just went along with it. You are part of the problem. Let's see, True Grit, Utah. Sounds like hexatious, putting a hex on those who seek truth, causing irritation they label vexatious. I didn't think of that way, yeah. The petition to label us hexatious. Okay, next we've got, this is kind of interesting, but I think like if you've been paying attention the past couple of years, that the Republican Party seems like it's broken. And I don't know what's going on or if there's a fix to this, to be honest with you, because it's like every time you think we're past these removing people from the party, we get a new one, right? So first we had, I think the first actual removal I can think of is Casey Gale. When he was removed, I don't remember if it was just from the State Central Committee, but I think that's might have been what it was from, in late 24, early 2025. And I represented him in that. And so that's one. Then we had the removal of the 8, which again included Casey, and then 7 others, 7 women and Casey, for the signing of the letter that was drafted by Tracy Halverson. And this was about the party endorsing candidates in municipal elections. Then recently, we had the removal of the vice chair of the Salt Lake County GOP, so that's Sarah Montez. And then we have now the latest is they want to remove Michael Clara from the party. And I don't know where this goes, or if someone could tell me how this is helpful, I would love to hear it, because I don't understand how it's helpful to anything. Let's see. Monica says she was one of the 8 removed. The party is broken because it's hell-bent on silencing whistleblowers. I think that's right. I think she's right. So Michael announced that, let's see, it was June 26th. So I said, remember 3 weeks ago, I asked a question about the Utah Republican Party financing several Celeste Malloy political mailers, even though she was not the Utah GOP nominee. The typical response from party leadership is to ignore or mock the one asking such a question. Well, I filed a 14-page complaint with the FEC. This conducted issue arises from the Utah Republican Party's use of its nonprofit USPS marketing mail authorization and indicia to mail campaign materials on behalf of congressional candidate Celeste Malloy in Utah's 3rd congressional district primary. Yesterday, I was notified by the Federal Election Commission accepted my complaint. So he's filed a complaint with the FEC, and I think it's also with the U.S. Postal Service. I have read it. I think it's a very good complaint, and it will it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Right? He did note here that it's interesting. Mike Carey will go after Michael Clara. Mike Carey is the chairman of the Salt Lake County GOP, and so he'll go back and forth with Michael Clara on social media, and sometimes he gives information that I think becomes useful for these types of complaints. So he said, this is Mike Carey, these indicia, that's what it's called, mail fraud attacks are amusing. This is not a Salt Lake County GOP program. I think that's true. It's a Utah Republican Party program. So the state party runs it. And no one in county party leadership has anything to do with it. It's a state party program that predates my tenure in Utah, 15 and a half years. Feel free to connect more dots and claim again that things are illegal when they are not, or go make a citizen's arrest of state party leadership and every campaign that's used the indicia program, since not a single prosecutor agrees with you. See how that goes. Then he said, sarcasm implied, since it's become clear that some individuals only follow my advice when it involves trying to arrest me or other party leaders. Okay, so Michael filed the complaint. I was going to say here. So yeah, Michael didn't go and claim that things are illegal when they are not, or make a citizen's arrest. He actually just filed a complaint with the governing agencies of these programs, so the ones that should look at it, which I think is how this should be done. Now, my understanding is that Michael first has tried to get more information from the audit committee and Republican Party sources about how the program works and stuff, and has gotten kind of the blow off from them. And so this is the response: is we got a complaint. Now, let me show you the next thing. The response from the GOP has been interesting. Let's see here. Okay, here he goes. So Michael posted an update telling us what the party is doing. This is just July 5th, so yesterday. So he said, it is brought to my attention that the Salt Lake County GOP chair, Mike Carey, has a new plan to oust me after the Utah Republican Party Executive Committee adjourned last Monday night. One, they concluded that the state central committee does not have the power to expel me from the Utah Republican Party. Two, they will instead place my name on next month's SCC agenda to remove me as a member of the audit committee. Oh, that's interesting. I wonder what the percentages of the vote he'll have to get to do that. The problem I see with that, if they remove him from the audit committee, is that he's actually doing the job you would expect of an audit committee member, right? You're supposed to be in there to audit and make sure that the party is complying with law and complying with policies. If they're not doing that, and then you try to bring it up and they don't listen, you should be able to go and file a complaint. If you can't do that, then there's no point of an audit committee. Two, this will then clear the way for the Salt Lake County Republican Party Executive Committee to strip me of my membership on the SCC and the County Central Committee, and then they will ban me from participating in the Utah Republican Party for a yet to be determined number of years. More importantly, the public display of these acts of retaliation towards me underscores the degree to which these secret combinations have infiltrated all levels of political life in the state of Utah. I'll be honest with you, I don't fully understand the secret combinations stuff. I think that's deeper than what I know about LDS, maybe philosophy. I don't have a better word for it. As mentioned in a previous post, in fulfilling my duties as a member of the audit committee, I inquired into the use of the GOP political indicia. Following that inquiry, I filed a complaint with the FEC and the USPS. I want you to take note of the arrogant and malicious comments that Chairman Mike Carey dropped on my Facebook page within the last 24 hours. So he said, you're probably costing the party 10 to 20K to address this BS, all because you're a petty whiner. Huh. Okay. You sprinkle Cheeto dust on your keyboard, making shit up for dopamine hits from 50 to 100 perpetually angry people on Facebook. Okay. I'm laughing because I feel like people always say I'm angry, for example. And I'm like, I'm not angry. I'm just kind of like, okay, whatever. Some of it's actually, I find some of this entertaining. I mean, look, here's the thing. So, Michael Clare is on the audit committee for the Republican Party. He's a very good choice for that, if you think about it, right? He's the one who, through grandma requests and being very meticulous about it, was able to show that the 2024 GOP primary for the governor's race was stolen. And I think it was actually stolen for other ones as well. So causing them to have to do, I think it's 3 audits total and change the law. So you've got all these different things that they've had to do because of his work. That's the perfect person you would want in an audit committee position because they clearly have an eye on detail. They understand how to keep on peeling the onion back as they get more facts, and then to help improve the processes, the laws, etc., which is what we should want. Frankly, if you go through the 8 people, the 8 people that were removed because of that letter, I mean, these are some of the kind of the deepest thinkers I know on policy, on issues, who can really dive into stuff and understand it on a level that I think a lot of us don't understand. So like for education issues, I always call up Monica Wilbur because like her knowledge of education issues is beyond anything I'd ever have. And so you can go to someone like that as an expert and she'll understand not just what the policy is, but what the intention of the policy is, which you need to understand to be able to fight all these different things that they're doing. Because sometimes something can sound great, right? For example, I used to think, yeah, we should remove cell phones from classrooms. Obviously, kids shouldn't have them. They're distracting. And then somebody told me, well, actually, the only reason I know the bad things that the teacher teaches my child is because my child has a phone and can record it and then come back and show me what happened. And a lot of parents talk about this. Like, we've seen things that we don't want teachers talking to our kids about. Well, so then you take away the phones, which again, I think there's 2 sides to that one because phones can be distracting, but again, there's some value to them. Then we didn't come up with a compromise of, okay, you can't have your phone, but we're going to have a camera in the classroom. That seems like a better kind of compromise to me. Or maybe like the phone has to be limited and it's functioning during the day, right? You can't get on the internet or social media. But instead of doing that, we just took the phones out, which strikes me as protecting teachers who want to be activists. So, but in order to understand that, I have talked to like people that are actually deeper into the policy issues than I am, And Monica says, secret combinations is a reference to the cabals in the Book of Mormon who engaged in robbing, murdering, plotting, etc. Oh, interesting. Okay. So that's a very specific reference that he made there. Okay. So then he says, this is the typical behavior of the Utah GOP leadership. Instead of acknowledging problems brought to their attention, they instead respond with ridicule and disparaging, taunting remarks. They don't even try to hide their illegal activity. They instead deploy a tactic of political subversion designed to assassinate the good name and character of those that want the party and government to stay true to its stated principles. If you are one of the 160 members currently serving on the SEC, the governing body of the Utah Republican Party, don't fall for the flattery and deception of the current leadership. Vote to maintain my membership on the audit committee. I have demonstrated that I do not suffer fools gladly. That's a characteristic you want in an audit committee member. And I agree with this. He's right. This is what we want in an audit committee member, is someone who's willing to, like run down the facts. And then if they're not getting the appropriate response from the party and they are breaking the law, to go and file the complaint. And then let the FEC handle it and the USPS handle it. That's how this process is supposed to work. Okay, let's see. So that's kind of, I think this is going to be an interesting one. I am really bothered by the constant removals of people. Again, right now, the primary is over. Okay, we have our nominees. And regardless of how you feel about the party, the only effort that the party should be doing right now is trying to get those people into office, right? To be fair about this, I've run for office. Some of you that are listening have run for office. And when you do that, you're like out there putting yourself out there for people to be able to judge and to be able to make a determination about whether they want to put you into office. The least the party could do is be focused on trying to get you into office, because you're putting so much at risk by willing to put your name out there. So we have like these county-wide candidates. And honestly, I think we have some good county candidates here. We got Kathleen Anderson for the at-large seat. She seems like a firecracker, kind of in a good way. You have Shane, God, what is his name? Shane Manwaring running for sheriff. Right? And then you have, who's the guy running for district attorney? Why is his name slipping my mind? Hold on. You can picture him. Salt Lake. I'm going to look this up because I don't want to forget. DA candidate. I can totally picture him in my mind. His name is not Sean Robinson. Here it is. Kent Davis. Okay, so Shane Manwaring, Kent Davis, Kathleen Anderson, running in county-wide seats. Those are very difficult to win. We should be focused on trying to get them in office, right? Because that will actually make a big difference in the quality of life. If you switch out Sim Gill for Kent, you'll get a massive improvement in law enforcement and crime in the county. If you get rid of Rosie Rivera and you replace her with Shane Manwaring, huge improvement in the sheriff's office. If you replace Lori Stringham with Kathleen Anderson, huge improvement in the county council, right? Instead of focusing on that, we're having intra-party fights, removing people that are whistleblowers. And I don't see this ending in a good place. And let me add, I think actually the biggest threat to GOP dominance of Utah, to the extent it's that, some of this is fake Republicans, but we, at least in numbers, we have a supermajority at the state legislature. We control all the statewide offices. In most of the counties, they're controlled by Republicans. Salt Lake County is the big exception since we're a third of the population. But if you think about it from that perspective, I think the biggest threat to the Republicans maintaining that supermajority status is corruption. And so if at the party level, if we're telling people, we don't want you to report something if you think it's illegal, if you think it's corrupt, we're actually going to retaliate against you if you're being a whistleblower, what does that say about how we're governing the state? Because there are corruption issues in the state. Like I don't even think we could spend days talking about all the corruption in the state. It's everywhere. And it's being done by Republicans. So when you think about it that way, and that's the biggest threat, we should be encouraging whistleblowers to come forward. We want all the corruption to be rooted out because we are better off. Well, I think we're better off having Republicans in office, even if they're soft and like Amy Winder Newton style Republicans, because at least on some issues, they feel pressure to vote the right way. But because we should be, well, let me say, we should also be working on fixing that by getting rid of fake Republicans. But to the extent that there's a choice between a Republican and a Democrat, generally, I think we're better off with the Republican in office. And so if the biggest threat to that is having this kind of like this widespread corruption, then we should want whistleblowers to come forward and to expose it all and to fight it ourselves. If we don't do it, the Democrats are going to expose it, and then they're going to win offices. That's how this works. That's how they turn red states blue all the time. It's not just because they do it in a devious way or they do something crazy. It's typically that they use the corruption of the ruling party, and then they win the majority. And the difference between Democrats and Republicans is this. Republicans run on one thing and they do none of it. Okay, or very little of it. So, just as an example, we were promised mass deportations and we are not getting that. We're getting something very not that. We were promised election integrity. Ain't getting that either. I know that there's all this talk from Mike Lee about how he's going to pass the Save America Act. It's not going to happen. I can guarantee you it's not going to happen. I would love if it would happen. It's not going to happen. And if it happens, I will gladly say I was wrong. No issue at all. I will happily do. I'll even vote for Mike Lee the next time he's up for re-election. But like I said, it's not going to happen. Definitely not going to happen. But the Democrats, they 100% do everything they promise and more. So like if they ever get the majority in Utah, the first thing they will do is change all the election rules to make it so that fraud is legal. So you'll suddenly, we kind of already have the system set up for it because we have mail ballots. So they'll start making it, they'll make it legal to ballot harvest. They'll make it illegal to poll watch. They'll make it so ballots can come in, weeks after election day, as long as they have a postmark on them. But then if you actually read the law more closely, it's not just a postmark. It just has to have some sort of indication that it was mailed on time, et cetera, et cetera. All the cheating will be legalized, and then you'll never win again. That's how they do it. They're geniuses. Our side is not. So our side, if you're a Republican, our side is more about pleasing their big donors and just using their grassroots supporters to get into power so they can please their big donors. That's all they do. All right, so True Grit Utah says, who actually, True Grit, oh, is this a play on Governor Cox's GRIT program? I think it's supposed to be like Doge for Utah because he's faking gay, so he couldn't just say Doge. Who actually runs the county Republican Party is a serious question. Why would they refuse to give a list of registered Republicans in a certain precinct to the chair of the precinct? Oh. When chair was asked for the list, he said he needed to run it by a couple of people. So who does the chair take orders from? I don't know about that. I'm a precinct chair and I have access to the list of registered voters in my precinct. Are you a precinct chair? I guess maybe that's the question. It sounds like you are, or somebody is, but I'm not sure I understand. Yeah, maybe give me a little more information there. Okay, so that's the Michael Clara thing. We will see what happens. I did want to go back. So on the 8 people thing, I wanted to say this as well. So, I think this is an issue, this misuse of the indicia program. So the way that it actually works is under the Postal Service regulations, under the Postal Service regulations, the nonprofits are not supposed to allow individuals or groups that do not qualify for the nonprofit postal rate to use their nonprofit postage. So if you let a candidate, step back one step. The Utah Republican Party has nonprofit status and has a nonprofit postal rate. If they allow a candidate to use it, the candidate is not qualified for the nonprofit rate. So they're actually violating that portion of the postal regulation by allowing the non-qualified candidate to use their cheaper nonprofit postal rate. That's what Michael Clara's his complaint is about. And then it kind of gets into a couple issues, which is there could be either an excess contribution from the party to the candidate, or there could be or like vice versa. There's some issues with contribution limits, depending on how they're funding these the indicia that the candidates are sending out using the party's nonprofit postage rate. Let me see if I can find an example for you, because Michael had one. I can show you what this looks like. It might make more sense. Give me 1 second here. Let's see. Here. Okay. Now let me pull this up. So this is what. Okay. So if you see here, Tawny McKay sent this out, and just so it's clear, like this isn't a single candidate issue. It's multiple candidates have done this. Celeste Malloy did the same thing. I think Blake Moore does it. Everybody does it, right? Because a party invites them to do it. If you are on the primary ballot and you got there through the convention that allow you to do it, they're not supposed to allow signature candidates to do it. So I guess Blake Moore wouldn't have done it. And then also, if you're the nominee after the primary, you get to do it too. And so what it says, if you look, is postage paid by the Utah Republican Party on her flyer. And so sometimes people get confused because they think, oh, the Republican Party is sending me this. That must mean they endorse the candidate. And in this case, Tawny was not the endorsed one for mayor. Neither of them were endorsed because it was 2 Republicans. But what is I think they changed this now. So it also says that it does not imply an endorsement by the Republican Party. So the problem, though, is I don't think that gets them out of the legal issue that's involved here. And so we'll see what happens with that. It should be interesting. More problems than the Utah GOP. And, I don't know if the Democratic Party does it too. So, I mean, does anyone get Democrat mailers? I don't really get any. So at least not yet. Maybe I'll get them in the general election, but they probably don't send them to me because I'm a registered Republican. They might focus more on independents. But I'd be curious if the Utah Democrat Party also allows their candidates to use their discounted postal rate to do mailers. And the way the process works is the candidate will work with the party to design a mailer, and then once they get a price on it, they'll make a donation to the party for the amount of the mailer, and then the party will mail it out using their nonprofit postage rate. But that's the problem, is I don't think that's allowed under the law, and so that actually needs to be changed so that we are in compliance with the law and that they're not putting at risk their ability to have that nonprofit postage. So kudos on Michael for making the complaint. I guess we shall see where it goes. Okay, True Grit says, yeah. Oh, so you're a precinct chair and they're not letting you look at the list. That's kind of weird. Are you able to log into the Salt Lake County GOP system to do it? So then the other piece is that this is an issue that the 8 who were removed brought up, is that you're illegally using the indicia for non-endorsed candidates. And so that was an example, the Tawny McKay thing. That's actually what catalyzed them to send their letter that they did. And here's the thing I want to say. I didn't agree, and I've said this, I didn't agree legally with the points that they made about it being a criminal violation. But I understood where it came from. And there's been people that have said, oh, Tracy Halverson is a grifter. And I can tell you, she's not a grifter. I actually think when she filed it and the things that she has filed, she genuinely believes them. I've talked to her. She's a genuine fighter, genuinely wants the party to be conservative and wants it to be better. And I understand this frustration. I actually think what a lot of these leaders, the leadership doesn't realize, is that a lot of the grassroots understands that the 2024 election was totally stolen, the gubernatorial race. And actually I saw something that even maybe the senatorial race was as well, where these candidates did not actually get a sufficient number of signatures to be put on the primary ballot, and they still were. And so they totally cheated, and the party did nothing. All the party did was file a grandma request, and then when it was denied, they just left it. And they didn't even go through the appeals process. They didn't take it to district court. They didn't really fight it in the way you would expect a party to fight. And here's the thing, like, if you're going to say, I oppose SB 54, great, fantastic, okay. but then it has to be followed with action. And so when you know, and the party leadership knows that Lieutenant Governor Henderson cheated in the 24 election. They know. They all know. The response when she did that would have been to go to war with her and to do it legally. So you file the grammar request. You appeal that grammar request at that time to the State Records Committee. You take it to the district court and you fight it all the way. And then you fund people to keep on getting all the information out. You move to censure her and Governor Cox at the State Central Committee. You do everything you can to completely destroy these two. That's how I would respond. You remove their, clearly we can remove people from the Republican Party and ban them from being members for years. Why hasn't that been done to Lieutenant Governor Henderson or Governor Cox? They cheated in an election. I don't want to be in a party with them. So remove them. They're the problem. I haven't done anything wrong. I don't think those 8 people did anything wrong. I don't think Sarah Montez did anything wrong, and I don't think Michael Clare did anything wrong. So if you can remove them, why are you removing the people that actually broke the law? Why are they still in this party? Is that what our party represents? Is actual literal lawbreakers over law-abiding people who are actually seeing a problem and being whistleblowers and reporting the problem? I can't get on board with. I think that's a big problem, and that's going to lead to the state turning blue. When it'll happen is an open question, but I think my own suspicion is it'll happen. So anyway, I don't know if people see what I'm saying, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Okay, next thing is, let's talk about socialism. Okay, so I don't know if you guys noticed this. I very much enjoyed all the the nice celebrations for the 250th and how that went. I thought it was the fireworks were pretty, right? I liked all the flyovers. Those are pretty cool. Although I missed the one by my house. We were trying to see it, and so we went in a field by my house, but I guess they flew too low for us to see it. I feel stupid because I should have driven over to the city where they were having the rodeo thing for Riverton, but whatever. I have seen the flyover before. It's all good. What I was going to say though, so the latest thing is that we have all these kind of democratic socialists that are winning elections all across the country, and I've seen Republicans they're getting really excited, right? I think a lot of them realize that they actually haven't done a very good job. So because think about it, 2024 we gave Trump a mandate, and the mandate I think included immigration. So it was deporting every single illegal immigration, mass deportations, obviously closing the border. I actually think people wanted less immigration overall. That's what people want. I think they wanted corruption gone. They wanted a deep state taken care of. They want things to be more affordable. Although, like I said, I don't think the way to get to affordability at this point is to depend on prices going down, because not everything is going to go down. You need wages to go up. So that's actually links back to immigration as an issue. Housing prices could fall, right? But the government's not going to let them fall, as Trump has made clear. And, people don't want crony capitalism. I think they're tired of that, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of things. They had a big mandate. And I think all we've gotten so far is the big, beautiful bill, which is totally way too complicated. It's basically, they're saying, they said they passed a tax cut, but all they did was extend the tax cuts that already existed. They made some small changes to them. And then that's it. And for a little while, they were doing mass deportations, but I don't know what the issue is, but they let communists run an op and interfere with the operations. When they started attacking officers, 2 of them got killed, I think justifiably. And then Trump shut down that whole operation because I think he's afraid of bad press. But I don't care. I want mass deportations. I want these people out of my country. And we're now at the point where they're all going to be having babies. They're going to be here forever. That's 50 million illegals, 40 to 50 million illegals that are not going to leave. So that's just your baseline. Then you've probably got, I think if you listen to that Greg Bovino, he says 100 million illegals. I don't think that's illegals. I think he's saying like 50 million of these illegals, like real, and then maybe another 50 million of them maybe temporary workers, like H-1Bs, H-2As, all these different things. I want all of it ended. And instead of getting this like kind of transformational change, sorry, one more thing, massive budget cuts, right? You know, with COVID, they massively expanded the federal government and what it was doing, and they're not cutting it back at all. In fact, we're just running massive deficits. They cut tiny like pat themselves on the back. They get so excited. Oh my God, we cut $3 billion. And you're like, the budget is like $7 trillion. That's like, it's like you cut pennies out of it and you're tapping yourself on the back. So basically they're getting very excited about this. Oh, these socialists are winning, guys. Oh my God, we're gonna be able to beat them. It's so much easier now. The problem is that what the Republicans are selling is also socialism. Okay, so like what we have under the Republicans is not a free market system at all. There's nothing free market about this. Every single industry is dominated by government, all the big ones. So just think about it. Healthcare. Anyone think that's a free market system? There's nothing free market about it. Education. And not like, I mean, obviously like K through 12, totally government, but then you get to the colleges, all government. The whole thing is dominated by government. Then you look at housing, all government, right? The government funds the mortgages. The government tells them, you know, they have all sorts of programs to incentivize Section 8 housing, to get rid of your local zoning. They just passed that big housing bill that everyone's excited about. That housing bill is socialism. It literally has laws in it where the federal government is going to encourage your local zoning to be single family zoning to be eliminated. They want it so that if, let's say someone comes into my neighborhood, I live in a neighborhood of quarter-acre lots, single family homes. Someone would be able to come in, knock down a house, and build a fourplex here. That's what the federal government is trying to encourage in all of our neighborhoods. They want to densify everything. So they dominate housing. They dominate the tech industry. They do it through contracts. So, you know, every single tech company now has government contracts. And so guess what? They now control what these companies do. Everything is dominated by the government. And all that does is it benefits their big donors. And it hurts the regular everyday person. Because you can't, unless you have these connections. And if you see this in Utah, the people that are doing the best are those that are connected to government. And they're the biggest cheerleaders of the status quo. So, you know, I was down in southern Utah when they had that debate between Celeste Malloy and Phil Lyman. And I thought to myself, I saw Alexa Sens and I was like, oh yeah, I mean, she supports Celeste. She is, because she benefits from the status quo through her husband's company. And you see this, and she's just one example. You see this throughout the state. It's all these people that are sucking on the government teat. And then they think that they're like, you know, they support all of the status quo people because they need stuff from the government. I run my own law practice. I don't want anything from the government. I would like the government to get out of my life. Like, get the F away from me. And I wish more people were like that. That's the American way. It's not to sit here and go on talking about how you want government to do everything for you. And let me show you an example of this. Okay, here's Republican socialism. Because as Trump talks about how he's upset, how he's like, you know, socialism's bad, he literally is pushing socialism.
Entrepreneurial, as opposed to, it's going to teach children to be entrepreneurial, as opposed to the threat of communism that you're seeing a lot. This is not social democrats, by the way. That's a beautiful, we're social democrats, they say. They're not social, they're communists. They want to destroy our country. We're not going to let that happen. But this helps, even from the parent standpoint. You know, they see their child getting richer and richer as the market goes up. If it goes down, they don't lose anything. They make money, they have money. But if it goes up, they could become actually rich. And the parents are going to be watching, and we're all going to be watching, and we're part of a very big and very beautiful game. It's going to bring them into the mainstream. It's going to teach children to be entrepreneurs.
Okay. So, first of all, if you have kids that qualify, I think you should sign up for it. They're giving away free money. You should take it. You're actually not doing yourself a benefit by, not doing it because you think the government should save the money. Apparently they just want to give everyone free money. But this isn't free markets. This isn't what the American way has ever been, that the government hands your kid $1,000, and that shows them that they're going to be entrepreneurial. That shows them that you can get free stuff from other people. That's actually sending the total opposite message. And that's a form of socialism. And by the way, like we'll get $1,000 a kid or whatever, but his big donors are getting a lot more out of the government than your child ever will. And they're getting all sorts of special favors. And you can kind of see it happening now with the AI companies, because the AI companies are over leveraged. So you saw OpenAI, Sam Altman, who is the head of it. He's actually out there now trying to get the government to buy 5% of his company. That's a bailout. He's trying to get a bailout from the government. So now we're stuck. We'll get 5%, and then we're stuck trying to protect them from going under if their product sucks. And now we'll be passing laws to protect their ability, to hold on to their market share. Like I don't want to be part of this. I don't like that Trump keeps on getting like stakes in companies, because again, that's not a free market. That's socialism. If the government has a stake in a company, Europe has tons of this, right? They have kind of those state champions. But all that means is the government now is going to be setting up systems to protect their investment in these companies. And that's not a free market system. It never will be. And that's what I just think. I think the GOP has totally missed the boat. We don't have a free market system, and that's the problem. So when you go and you talk to people and they're complaining, rightfully so, that they're not able to make it, right? This actually, hold on. We got to play the press secretary. Her name Levitt. Let's play this, because this actually made me mad this weekend. Here, is this her? Okay, let's play this real quick, and then we'll talk about it, because this actually made me mad. And I'm not Gen Z, I'm Gen X, but
to come here right now.
Some of these kids, and I call them kids because they're in their 20s, and they've never had real jobs, and they're complaining things are expensive. Yes, things are expensive when you don't have a real job.
That's right.
Do you think that's getting traction, complaining?
Unfortunately, I do, because this generation, my generation, I hate to say it, Gen Z and those younger than me have been raised with just silver spoons in their mouth, just getting everything handed to them. That's not the values this country was built on. It was built on meritocracy and hard work, pulling up your sleeves, pulling yourself up from your bootstraps, and achieving the American dream. And we need to protect it with all we got.
Is it laziness?
A little bit.
Is it because the professors said the country's corrupt, it's evil, and we just need to shake them down and hand money out?
It's laziness, and it's the liberal indoctrination. You bring up a great point about our education system. However, I will say, a silver lining, so many parents that I talk to across the country are homeschooling, are turning to private education, are turning towards Christian schools across the country, because they don't want their children being taught these communist and liberal ideas slammed down their throat. It's why President Trump in the White House has advocated so strongly for school choice across the country. We want kids to be taught to love our country. They should. It is the greatest country in the history of the world.
All right. I say, if they misbehave, just make all these young kids join the army, right? Shape them up. I almost had to.
Send them to Cuba. Send them to Iran. They'll want to come back real quick.
That's a good point. They can say hi to the gay Ayatollah. Thank you so much, and welcome back, Caroline.
Okay. Well, first of all, that entire comment about sending them to the military is completely offensive, because people volunteer to go and join the military because they want to serve their country. They may have different reasons for doing it, but that's something noble and a good thing. Why would you say like someone who's being lazy should just go and join the military in like a condescending way, like he said it? I just found that really offensive. But the first part of this about how Gen Z is lazy and entitled, I don't get that sense at all. I think there's a lot of Gen Z that wants to be able to make it and have a good living, but they see that the entire system has been rigged against them. So costs are high. This is true. Prices for everything have gone up. I think they've gone up 100% since 2020. So it is unaffordable. Wages haven't kept up. And they haven't kept up because of the government. Because under Biden, yes, the government let in 20 to 25, I said 25 to 30 million illegal aliens. Plus there were another 20 million already here, 20 to 30 million, whatever that number is. So you have about 40 to 50 million total illegal aliens in the country that are suppressing wages and taking away opportunities from Americans. That's number one. Okay. Number two is we also are letting in tons and tons of legal immigrants, H-1Bs. We bring in this, these are foreign laborers brought in to take good tech jobs from people. And they suppress your wages. They're compliant. I know these people. I've met them. Okay. They bring them from India on purpose because Indians have a compliant culture. They do not stand up for anything. I'll just tell you, in my family, I'm very much an anomaly. My parents don't get me because during COVID, I was very vocal about the fact that I'm opposed to all this stuff. And they were always just like, oh God, this, like, they think I'm nuts. They've come around, but like it's weird because culturally I don't act like them. So, we're destroying these kids' ability to go and make a living. And then we're criticizing them for being unhappy about it instead of trying to solve the problem. Okay, the actual solution here is to do mass deportations of illegals. And if you don't want to do the actual mass deportations, then you need to remove the ability of illegal aliens to live here. And that means doing things like no banking, no leasing property, no buying property, no bank account, no job. And we're going to go and we're going to do enforcement against every employer that hires an illegal alien. You want to see mass deportations? You can do it without actually sending agents everywhere. It's not impossible to do. They just don't want to do it. Okay, so and then also when we tell these kids, hey, you should go to college, go into the tech industry, you'll be able to have a successful life, and then we flood their fucking industry full of foreigners, and then we're like, well, why are you unhappy? You don't want to work around a bunch of Indians that have nothing, they don't have anything culturally, they're not culturally like you, they discriminate against you actively. Okay, like if you meet Indians that just come here from another country, they are actively racist against black people and white people, both. Okay, so yeah, those people are they're not going to be discriminating when they hire, when they promote, when they're looking for new people to work in their companies. Sure. Okay, so like we're importing this. Our federal government is allowing this still to this day. And I talked in a previous show how even Trump put in the $100,000 fee on new foreigners coming to be H-1B visas. The whole thing is undermined because the H-1Bs are just pulled from all the student visas we give out. So you go to college. I went to college in the 90s, 95 to 99 for undergrad, and then 2000 to 2003 for law school. There were hardly any foreigners in my undergrad or law school. Law school, I wouldn't expect it, but in undergrad, there were like no foreigners. Hardly any. Now we've flooded it with foreigners. So our like American kids have to go to college and they're literally, hey, quiet. American kids have to go to college and they have to share their, sorry, we got dogs are going crazy. Give them a second. Let me close my door. American kids go to college and they're studying with foreigners in their own country. You can't even have your own country be for you. I just found this is a horrible messaging, but I don't even care much about the messaging as I do about, can we actually start thinking about American kids and how to make America a better place for them to be able to live? And then I hear people tell me, well, Goud, they still live in their parents' basement at 30. Does anybody think that a kid wants to live in his or her parents' basement until they're 30? Of course not. Nobody does. I mean, look, we were all children once. I wanted to get out of my parents' house and go and like make it on my own and have my own life, and I did it. And I think today the kids would do it if we made it possible. We don't make it possible for them. Okay, let's see. Monica says the average income needed to afford a 3-bedroom home with a 30-year fixed mortgage at 6.5% in Utah is $169,000. These kids will be renting their entire lives. That's horrible, right? That's a lot of money. Okay, hold on. Let me close my door because my dog's not gonna shut. I have a friend that's staying with me, so maybe she just got back. She was out doing something. Then she said the income needed to afford. Oh wait, sorry. The average income 3-bedroom home. Homes are absolutely unaffordable in Utah. Young adults are screwed to be forever renters. Exactly. And you know what? Those interest. Here's the thing. Either housing prices have to fall, and they're not going to fall because the government has set a floor under pricing, and Trump is explicitly saying, "I don't want housing prices to fall. I want them to go up." Okay, well that's not helpful to young people or to anyone really who wants to switch homes. But also, or interest rates need to drop. But as long as the government is spending money like a drunken sailor, we're never going to have an interest rate decrease, right? We're going to run a $2 trillion deficit in this fiscal year right now. This is with Trump in office. This is a Trump budget. Well, I mean, they didn't really pass a Trump budget. They basically did another omnibus. But these people, we elect people that aren't serious. They don't really care about your kids at all. All they care about are their donors. And they're not going to fix this problem. We haven't elected a single person out of Utah who would actually be up there to fix the problem. Now, Caroline teaches Matt said, if you were Hassan Piker, you'd electrocute your dog. Never. I would never do that. I know I've seen those videos, like really horrible, right? I can't do that to them. I love them too much. So he's weird. Yeah, so I found that video to be really offensive, but I also think the policies being put out by the GOP or the execution of policies isn't working for those young people. And the result is that the polling has flipped and now those people want to vote Democrat. And I don't blame them. I'll just be totally honest with you. I don't blame them. Because if the answer of the Republicans, the Democrats are saying, we're going to do socialism that's going to help you. Okay, we're going to freeze the rents. We're going to give you a free bus ride. I don't really want to ride a bus, but maybe some people do. We're going to do all this stuff to make your life more affordable. The Republicans' answer is the status quo is a free market, and we're going to do that. And I just keep thinking to myself, how is this a good thing? The status quo sucks. It's unaffordable, and it's benefiting the people that are connected to the government while making it so other people aren't able to enter those markets because it's not fair. Okay. Mars Gate says commies are inside the country big time, and it's a way to run a smart city. Herd the kids in there. Yeah, that's true. That's true. And Caroline teaches Matt says the Dems won't do anything for them. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I actually think their policy prescriptions are worse, but it's such a hard argument to make if we're arguing that the status quo is great, because I don't think it is. And I think that, like young people are living it and they're recognizing it. And it's not just young people. Actually, if you go across the board, people are talking about, unaffordability, how life is unaffordable. People are talking about wages aren't rising. People are talking about how difficult it is to be able to buy a home. Or, like I live in a kind of a big house for a single person. I wouldn't mind selling my house and moving to a smaller home. I can't do it because, I have like 3% interest rate. And it would be hard to give that up to go and try to buy a smaller house. So, and that's unfortunate because there's probably a young family that might want to come and buy my house and, have tons of kids because it's a big house. So when you think about it that way, you kind of have to be like, okay, like we need a change. We voted for a change and we're not actually getting it. And I think the end result will be that we'll probably lose the midterms. And I know they're saying we redistricted and that's going to fix everything. I don't know if it fixes stuff or not. To me, it just seems like there's just a great fix for this. So now I had something else on this. Oh, actually, I liked this. Here. So MTG, Marjorie Taylor posted this. Let me show you this. And she gets to what I'm talking about here. So and she's talking about Social Security. And I know this gets people worked up some people worked up because, you're talking about boomers. So people like my parents, they have Social Security. And to be fair about this, they did pay into it. And they increased their taxes when they're in the 80s and said, we're going to put all of this into a trust fund, right? Because we're planning for when you guys retire, because it's going to be such a big burden that we have to take extra taxes now. We're going to build a trust fund and we'll be able to pay you guys and everything will be great. And then what they did is they spent all the money in the trust fund and more. And then they threw these IOUs into a file cabinet in West Virginia. Using that money the way they did made deficits look smaller throughout the entire period of time when that was going on. And so you have to feel kind of bad for people that they paid all this money into it, and then the government spent it all. Now there's a lesson there, right? I think there's a lesson if you're paying attention. That means that if maybe the way to save money is not to give it to the government, it's to actually save your own money yourself. Or maybe put it in private accounts, which gets people worked up. But like, at least then the government can't steal it and spend it on other stuff, right? Which is what they did with the Social Security Trust Fund. I feel bad for people that this happened. Now, she's identifying something here, and I just want to point this out. So she says, most Americans are trapped in the two-party mindset. She's correct. Okay, I am part of this. I'm trapped in this myself. But just wait until 2032 when Social Security and Medicare is insolvent and they start cutting benefits from Americans, even though you've paid in your entire working life by force. Yes, that's right. Social Security and Medicare will be bankrupt in just a few years. Congress makes the budget every single year, and Congress is responsible for this impending disaster, even though it's the last thing they want to talk about and the last thing they want to fix. They have overspent your tax dollars by trillions and trillions to the point the value of the dollar is going down so rapidly that by the time Social Security and Medicare go bankrupt, many of you won't be able to support yourselves because the dollar will be so weak. The dirty little secret on how they're going to handle it is this. First, they're going to take Social Security away from the rich, and that won't bother the majority of Americans. But give it a few more years and they'll be taking away Social Security from the middle class too, because the compounding interest on our national debt is growing so fast and out of control that there's no real way to fix it. And that's when Americans will finally be so angry that they have had it, but it will also be too late. And this is accurate. If we get to that point, it's too late, it's done. You're not going to be able to fix it. Most Americans don't have any real savings for retirement. So by that point, not only will most Americans not get Social Security checks, but they won't have any real retirement set up. And the value of the dollar will be so incredibly weak that it will plunge most Americans into poverty. And both political parties are to blame. Both Republicans and Democrats are doing this to Americans while Americans are too busy to notice. Republicans are going to tell you that you have to vote for them because they are the lesser of two evils, but really they're both one and the same and operate together. Monica, to your point about the uniparty, Republican and Democrat voters are just fighting each other to their own demise. But if everyone were to break free from the fake two-party system and demand real accountability from the people that they vote for, then you might actually save America. Now, here's the thing, is that the parties have infrastructure that theoretically helps to win elections. I actually think Democrats are better at using their infrastructure than Republicans are, but they do have an infrastructure. So a third party is actually very difficult to be able to do. However, if somebody like this launches a third party run, what she would most likely do is actually damage the Republican Party so badly that the Democrats will win. You should be thinking like Ross Perot in '92, and then you end up with a totally. Again, the Republicans lose. I think if the Republicans lose in 28, I'm not sure there's a way to recover from it at the presidential level, because the Democrats, if they win. And actually most of the Republicans you elect, okay, so will do amnesty if there's a Democrat president. I even think they'll probably do it in the second half of Trump's term, if you ask me. But and once amnesty happens for the illegals that are here, Republicans will never win another national election again. And at that point, then what you have to do is you have to kind of fortify your red states, which we're not doing. So, the country's probably done at that point. I don't want to sound so negative like that. So the way to actually do this is to reform and take over your Republican Party. That I think is the best vehicle for trying to change things. That's what Trump did in 2016, right? Was to go in, his supporters took over the party. You had it happen once before with the Ron Paul guys. I think that was like 2012, right? Or was it 2008? Whenever the Ron Paul revolution happened. So they've done it as well. But what we have to do in Utah is those of us that are actually conservatives have to come up and start to, I think, take over the parties, the county parties, the state party, all of it, the delegates, the precinct chair positions. And then we can start to work to kind of turn things around at a policy level. But until we do that, I don't see this changing much. And I think long term, we end up losing. And so that's like where I feel like this is heading. And it sounds negative, but maybe losing in the short term is good because maybe you win in the long term. I don't think that's, I actually have to say, I don't actually think that's true. I think if we lose now, we lose forever. But her threat's real, what she's talking about. And I do think if we end up with a third party that kind of takes on, there's certain issues where there's broad agreement, right? I think budget, you could probably get some broad agreement if you start talking to people about, look, both parties are overspending. They've run us 40 trillion into debt. We're never getting out of this at the rate we're going. We actually need something new. You could get probably people from both parties that are more reasonable to come on board. Data centers, if you're anti-data center, I actually think it goes a long way. And then the next one would be the data centers. Immigration, I think that's going to be more of a Republican one if you're anti-illegal immigration. Although I don't know about grassroots Democrats. If you're talking about kind of like working class Democrats, maybe you get some traction there with that. H-1Bs, I actually think you probably get bipartisan support to shut that program down. So if you could pick certain issues and kind of run on them on a third party platform, you could probably actually, if you don't win, you can get the party maybe to absorb you in. So like RFK Jr. is a good example of that. He ran a third party run in 2024. I actually went to his rally in Salt Lake City, and a lot of the people there were Republicans that I knew. And he was making a call to something higher when he was talking. And it was very much an anti-corruption, anti-establishment. I don't agree with RFK Jr. on everything, but there's a lot there that I agreed on where I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting option. I would vote for it. I don't have an issue with it. But Trump was smart. He absorbed that RFK Jr. with the Maha movement into his campaign and then his kind of into his administration. I don't think they've fully been successful on that issue, but it certainly is a winner. And so like in a third party run, you could have a Maha thing too, but so a third party run could either be a spoiler. It could actually make an issue kind of prevalent, and then one of the parties absorbs it and it helps them win the election. Or maybe she's right. You could start a third party and change how America is run. I don't know. Maybe the Republican Party is dead. I really don't know at this point. So let's see. Okay, so we got some comments here. All right, so Monica says, uniparty politics and stakeholder governance are decimating government of the people for the people. Republicans are just as much a part of the problem as Democrats. Accurate. I agree 100%. Caroline teaches math. At least the Republicans will give people a chance through open markets, Monica. Socialists want us to boldly steal your money and give it to the favorite, and very few are favored. I mean, I want to agree with you. I will just say, I think right now the Republicans are doing the same thing as the Democrats, which is why I've been getting annoyed with this. Let the socialists divide the Dems, says Caroline. And that's the thing. I don't know if they're dividing them. I think that's where the party is moving. But we have to have a better alternative to that vision, right? If we're going to move forward, we have to have a better vision. I'll just tell you, I would think California is pretty socialist. And I've talked to my parents about it, right? Because if I'm totally frank, it would be really good for me to move to San Diego. My whole family lives there. Okay, except for I have some cousins that live in the Chicago area, but basically my parents live there. My sister lives there with her husband and kids. I would be right by all of them. And I always think okay, and it's beautiful. If anyone's been to San Diego, gorgeous city, beautiful weather. It's like paradise, right? But I'm always like, well, I don't know. I'm not a liberal, and I feel like it'd be annoying to live there. But my dad has pointed out to me that really, like, taxes and cost-wise, if you're kind of in that, let's say 100 to 200,000 mark, that the taxes are not that different than like a Texas. All right, I think it's a little bit higher, but it's not the way that they paint it to be. And he's actually right. When I looked into it, I was like, oh, the tax burden isn't that much crazier. That's kind of interesting for middle class people. And so just to the point about socialism is that I think that those guys that do the socialism, they are careful not to overly burden middle class people. They tend to increase the burden on wealthier people. So they might hit people that I might not consider wealthy, like 300,000 and up or something. They'll hit them much harder, but they'll kind of keep that middle working class where the burdens are more manageable. Because otherwise this California thing doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's just cheating that has led to that. I do think at least they seem to win elections. Although there's probably some cheating, but not more cheating maybe than here. Okay. Monica says, well, Republicans are just managing the decline and they're going full steam ahead on global priorities, see data centers, AI surveillance, and manipulated markets. Caroline teaches math. Get off your phone and computers. Oh, I wish. Monica says, we can't reform the GOP at the Utah level from within if they keep kicking all the accountability and transparency wingers out. Ask me how I know. No, you're actually accurate on that. That's a very fair point. And I look, and the problem is, like, because they're actually like banning people for years, we're in this weird position because next year we should have elections for delegates and precinct chair, all that kind of stuff, right? Precinct chairs. And is it next year or is it 27? Well, 28. We'll do it 28. But there's people that are banned until after those elections happen that were these transparency fighters. And so I don't know how do we actually move forward if the party is constantly kicking out the people who are kind of the dissidents and are pointing out all these problems and trying to change things. Disagree better. But once they run out of rich people, middle class are the new rich. Oh, 100%. Like, I don't actually think $300,000 is rich, right? And I define rich to me as like you don't have to work anymore. So 300,000, let's say a couple, they work, they can make 300,000, they have a couple kids. That's upper middle class. It's not rich. And so, but yeah, like if you're in California, they're like, oh, well, you get higher taxes at that 300,000 mark. But like I said, it's just, if you like the people there, they seem to be okay with that little bit higher, or whatever, the higher tax burden. And so it just makes me think that these socialist guys are not stupid, that they're actually careful about how they structure this so that there's not like a mass number of people voting against them. Monica says Utah is the 14th largest tax burden of the 50 states. It's the highest tax burden of all the red states. That does not surprise me. We do have high taxes here. I wish they were lower, but what are we going to do? Okay. So then, and just one more example of that socialism I was talking about was, for example, like the legislature has passed 2 bills to give $1 billion to Ryan Smith to build a stadium and $1 billion to Gail Miller to build a stadium. That's socialism. That there's no need for that. They're both billionaires that can afford to build a stadium if they want it. Instead, we're handing over tax money to do the thing that they can do anyway. So it kind of makes me like, I don't want that. That's corruption to me. And I think, like, again, if we're going to fight socialists, we've got to have an alternative that is not also socialism. Because here's how it works. Like, Trump set up those Trump accounts. They're giving $1,000 free to kids. If I'm a socialist, I just come and I say, hey, we'll give you $5,000 a kid. And actually, he only did it from 2025 forward. We'll do it for all minors that are in the U.S. right now. And then you can just, you win more votes, right? We're all giving free money. Free money. I'll give you free money. And then Caroline teaches math says, what did you expect from our California invasion? I don't know. I will say that a lot of the Californians I know that moved are actually very conservative, but I get your point because we've also had the tech people that have come here and I don't think they're conservative at all. I worked among some of them, and they were not conservative. Okay, so let's do a quick talk on primary results. We had our primary. It's been 2 weeks. I apologize. I had a little time off here, but I thought overall disappointing on the congressional level. Right, we had the establishment win really all three of the races. I do think, like Mike Kennedy is actually my congressman, and he seems to be moving in the right direction on issues. I don't know what happened, but I do appreciate that. And I actually texted him last week because he was voting on something, and I just said, hey, look, this is how I feel about it, and I want to let you know that I do think you've improved on some issues. So I appreciate that. I am watching. And he did text me back and said thank you. So, I thought I do appreciate that. I think Blake Moore and Celeste Malloy both won. Those are establishment. And that means that there will be no change. And that's unfortunate because, like we were talking about Social Security earlier. And so let me show you this video just so you have a sense of how Celeste budgets. Let me show you this, and you'll quickly understand why we're not getting out of this with our current leadership.
At last year, you know that Celeste. But things are on the right track. If you look at last year, for the first time in over a decade, we had 3 different months out of 12. It was only 3, but we had 3 different months where we had more revenues coming into the federal government than what we had expenses. So it was balanced for 3 months. We just need to make it for 12 months.
Yeah. But that's a huge step in the right direction.
Huge step.
And that starts to add.
Okay. So that's how they think about budgets. I don't know what school she went to, but clearly not great quality. So maybe it's a knock on our education system, or Nevada's. I think she's from Nevada. But that's like, I could if I did a budget and was like, 3 months of the year I ran in the surplus, but the other 9 months I ran a massive deficit, which is what they did. That's not an accomplishment. Hello. And in fact, I think last year they ran like a $1.8 trillion deficit. I hope people are beginning to understand, like, there is no coming out of this. And the current leadership we have is not going to solve this problem. What really should have happened is when Trump won the election, he should have come in with massive changes. And I mean like cutting that budget back massively, just massive cuts across the board to all sorts of programs. I don't even care what it was, this radical rethinking, because what it would have done is it would have probably sent us into a recession for a little bit, but we would have been coming out of it this year and in a much better situation with the budgets under control, with inflation under control. Because he wasn't willing to make those tough choices or push Congress to do it, whichever one it was, we're now having a situation where I think, even if I don't even know what the economic growth figures look like for real, I think a lot of the figures are kind of goosed, but the employment figures are okay. And the inflation rates are too high. And so we didn't solve really any of the problems that he should have solved. And that was really unfortunate. But anyways, on that congressional level, I think there's no fix. Federal government's kind of, and I'll be honest with you, like, I don't, like, the federal government to me is kind of a lost case generally. I do think, and to your point, Caroline, we had some positives on the local level. And so and I think Caroline teaches math, Jordan Tusher managed to beat Stevenson in House 44. I think that's a good thing. Stuart Adams lost. I think that's fantastic. I don't even think his replacement is actually conservative. But she won't have any power at all. And so it's a positive. So, Stuart Adams was a problem on multiple levels. It was a corruption issue, but it was also an abuse of power issue. Because I would talk to House representatives when I was trying to be like, hey, would you be willing to pass this bill or that bill or whatever it is? And they would be like, tell me these stories about how Stuart Adams would tank bills if they wouldn't support bills that he wanted to go through with the exact language that he wanted and things like that. How he'd call them up and yell and scream at them if they made any changes at all. He was a bad legislator. So getting rid of him is a big positive. Now, if this new woman isn't any good, just vote her out next time. Who cares? Maybe she'll be great. I don't really know. I think she's more moderate, but I guess give her a chance. We'll see what happens. So I think that's positive. I will also note that in County Council District 5, that's down where I live. I think Caroline, I think it might cover you too. Monica, I don't know if it covers you, but Chris Null was running against Tracy Crockett, and Chris Null lost that race. I will just say, I'm friends with Chris, but I actually was glad with that result. And the main reason was he was the one that removed Casey Gale, and I think it was late 24, early 25, and I just couldn't get over that because it just seemed so wrong to me, and I didn't like the way that they did the hearing either, because in that case they didn't really give him all the information about why they were removing him before the hearing. I find that to be like a due process problem. And then they removed him from his state central committee position that he was elected to. I don't like canceling elections. And so I just think that result was a good result because, again, I think we would have been, to me, the result was better because of that problem with removing someone from the party. And that was kind of that's the prelude to the 8 being removed under Kerry, plus Sarah Montez, and now Michael Clara. So we're going to have 10 removed total by the time this is done, if he goes through all of this, right? Let's see. So then Caroline Teaches Math says he tried, federal judges blocked him on some stuff. I do not believe in judicial supremacy. And so I actually think when judges make incorrect decisions, which they do many times, that the executive can push back against it. And actually not even comply with their orders. Like a district court order, if I was a president, and not that I ever will be, but I would just be like, I just read the Constitution, and I as the president, I'm not co-equal to a district court judge. Then when the Court of Appeals ruled against me, I'd be like, just reread the Constitution again. I don't even see the Court of Appeals mentioned in here. I don't believe I'm a co-equal branch to the Court of Appeals either. And then if the Supreme Court came up and did it, I'd be like, we're co-equal. I don't agree with your analysis. Here's why, and here's why I'm going to ignore it. Now, you don't do it for every single thing, but if something's really important, that's exactly, you're right. That's what it means to be a co-equal branch. Right now, in every government we have across the country, we've got elected officials who actually seem to believe in judicial supremacy, and I think that's a big problem. It can't be that whatever the number, I don't know if it's 200 district court judges across the country have equal power to the presidency. Otherwise, that makes no sense. What's the point of elections? But that's just my criticism of him. Let's see. So Monica Wilbur says Tusher is behind the point. He's a globalist. Okay, fair point. The problem is I think that Stevenson guy was very pro the government unions, right? Having government employee, and I will tell you, I am opposed to that. I just think with government, I know there's people on both sides of this. My view is if you are a government employee, you already have an advantage of being able to negotiate with the people that you elect, because you can go and get them, you can have a PAC and go and kick them out of office. And so so I see it as unnecessary, and I think it's unfair. It's not the same as the private sector where they actually a lot of times need a union to be able to counter management. Also, you can't fire a lot of government employees. I don't know if Utah's like that, but in a lot of places, there's just so many restrictions. It's hard to fire government employees, which means they're in a totally different position than a private sector employee, as I learned. Okay, let's see. Caroline Jesus Matt says, better than Stevenson, Monica. Is that who you'd like in office? Monica Wilbur said, I don't vote for evil. Enjoy your 15-minute city. And Caroline Teaches Matt says, so you just don't vote. Okay. A little debate going on. I do think people should vote. I think you should, but I will agree. Actually, I will tell you that if I don't like our nominee, I've been leaving races blank if they don't earn my vote. And I think, like it may sound a little bit petty, but I do feel like I actually want to accomplish certain things. And so if I feel like someone isn't really representing my viewpoints, I'm not 100% sure that I should be forced to vote for them. And I'll just be honest, I was a never Mike Kennedy guy, but we'll see where this goes because, like I said, his voting record has bizarrely improved. And my understanding is that some of these college Republican guys talk to him about his positions. So, for example, the one I've been looking at is if he takes his name off this bill to create the H-2C visa program, this is the one that would allow employers to import like non-college educated people to do jobs that don't require a college degree. If he takes his name off of that and promises never to support stuff like that again, like this kind of more temporary visa programs to undermine American workers, I would be much more open to voting for him. But if he doesn't do that, then I probably won't vote for him. But we'll see. Let's see what happens because I have heard he's going to take his name off of that. I just haven't seen it yet. And but I will be keeping an eye on that. Maybe I'll text him at some point and ask. I just that makes me hopeful. At least one of them is moving to the right, which is a good thing. I don't think the other two will move to the right, and I don't think the Democrats going to move to the right. Although if Ben McAdams wins the general election, he's kind of uniparty, so I wouldn't accept it. I wouldn't expect any changes from him. And then Caroline Teaches Math says, "I'll write someone in before not voting." Oh, that's a fair point. That's a fair way of doing it. I don't have an issue with that. I guess I could write someone in instead of just like not voting for the Republican nominee. I just thought I don't know if we can just write someone in if we want to or not. And I tend to vote in person. So like I do it on the machine. That's just how you have to do it in Salt Lake County. And then Monica says, "Amen, Goud. You should never make your vote cheap. Voting is a reward for good, not a consolation prize for the least sucky." Yeah, I know. That's how I feel too. It's like, I used to be like, okay, we'll have all the fights in the primary and then I'll just vote for the Republican at the end of it. And then I kind of began to realize that it's not really that simple because the party plays a lot of games. Like in the 24 one, for example, like I did write in Lyman for the governor's race because they did cheat in the primary and I wasn't okay with that. So, as you I didn't vote for John Curtis because I don't like him. He kind of creeps me out. I'm not voting for the Democrat. So I think I left that one blank. So anyway, any other notable primaries? I guess, well, we know Dan McKay lost. I feel like that one's a mixed bag. As you guys know, I supported Dan because he did help me on some stuff. And I did feel like he was being responsive to voters. Mixed bag, but I do think like, he and I got along and I did appreciate that relationship. So we'll see how it is with Doug Fifia. I don't know that he'll be any better, to be honest with you. And I know I've said that multiple times, so I'll give him a shot. Let's see what happens. We got Jake Hunsaker for District 48. We'll see how that goes. I don't even know what to think about that because I feel like with him, he just kind of tells you what you want to hear. So I don't know what he'll be like as a legislator. I don't know. So I guess we'll see what that is. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was kind of notable and interesting. Oh, the Utah County Clerk. That was a bad race. That's another establishment win. They took out Aaron Davidson with Corey Astel, and Corey is totally establishment. So that office it'll basically be like having a Democrat. So I guess you can give him a chance. I just don't see that being valuable down there. So that you can say election integrity took a hit in Utah with that one. And in Davis County, they reelected Brian McKenzie, which is like, I don't even know. I'm just like, wow, you can literally cheat in an election and we will reelect you. This is so bad. Okay, those are all your notable ones, I think. Let's see. True Grit Utah says, I voted for Mickey Mouse once. I feel like that's basically not voting. So, that point. Okay, well, It is 7 o'clock. It's been a pleasure. I love all the comments. I did realize, I forgot. I couldn't take phone calls today because Mr. Producer is not here. I don't have a way to do it without sending you a link, and I don't want people to like porn bomb the thing or whatever. Anyway, I'm Goud. This is the Goud Crowd. We are on every Monday from 5 to 7 p.m. on X. My handle, which is Goud, the number 4 Utah. And then we're also at Rumble and YouTube and the and X for the Main Street Media Utah handle. You should also check out more other shows too. They run other shows during the week that are really good and are worth watching, and they're very Utah focused, so that's kind of fun. We have a couple more comments. Caroline Teaches Math said Corey and Todd Weiler are total squishes. Oh, I know. You should listen to their podcast if you want to hear what squishes they are. It's very clear. And Monica Wilbur says biggest losers were Davidson, Lyman, and Lee. Correct. I think that's accurate. Okay, on that note, it has been a pleasure. If you want to send me anything until next Monday, feel free to do that on X. You can DM me or at me or whatever, and I'll get it. It's Goud, the number 4 Utah. Until next week,